Please welcome CMO AI at Work, Microsoft, Jared Spataro.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We are so appreciative that you've taken time to attend the conference. I'm so appreciative that you've taken time to be here at the last day of the conference. Thank you very, very much. We have an incredible opportunity over the next few minutes to spend together, not talking about where we are right now, not talking about where we've been, but talking about the future and where things are going with this incredible moment with AI. I wish I could get into just a small room with a couple of you and talk through what I'm seeing. Unfortunately, we're here with a couple thousand of our best friends, so I'll try to do the same thing. We are going to spend the next few minutes together looking forward, thinking about where all this is going. And we're grateful that you would spend that time because we think we have an opportunity to shape together. We are at a remarkable moment when AI has reached a point at which it can truly reason, think, solve problems, be creative as well or even perhaps better than humans. It's a moment that I think many people have dreamed about for decades, perhaps hundreds of years, when machines could do cognitive work even more effectively, even more efficiently than humans could do. And the big question is, where does it all go? Before we go there, I want to take a moment just to emphasize why we think this is a moment to mark, why we think there's something very special happening. And to do that, I'm going to turn to a couple of benchmarks. Let's turn to the first one. Over the last 5 months, these frontier models, as they're called, have reached some important milestones in development. And to prove it to you, I'm going to turn first to what is called the GPQA, the Google Proof Q&A test. It's a set of questions, multiple choice questions that are meant to be very, very difficult for people to do well on, and they're now used as a measure of intelligence. If you look here, you get a sense of where humans stand. If you give this to a set of PhDs and ask them to do their best outside of their specialty, they get about a third of the questions right. If you give them questions that are within their specialty, what they've studied, they get just over 80% right. But just recently, OpenAI's O3 model, the most advanced frontier model, as you can see, got 87% right, beating the human benchmark for the very first time. It's a really important moment to mark. But it doesn't stop there. Let's move to another benchmark, this one called Frontier Math. This is a set of 300 private math problems, very difficult math problems. Not math problems that you can guess, but ones that take a lot of work to work out. Up until this point, no AI has ever scored higher than 2% on this frontier math baseline. But OpenAI's O3 model, again, achieved a 25%. Now, it's interesting to note, it's not 100%. We're not at the point where AI is perfect. We're not at the point where we can rely on it to be flawless. And that puts us at a very interesting moment to reflect on. We have something that is starting to be as good as, in some cases even better than humans, but it still makes mistakes, and that raises lots of important questions for us to face. Okay, now let's change for just a moment. We'll look at the Stanford 2025 AI Index. This was released just a couple of months ago, and there were 3 charts that stood out to me that help us also get a sense for this moment and what is coming together. The first one is what you see here. This is the progress on small models and how they're performing. If you look at the details here, you see something called the MMLU. This is the Massive Multitask Language Understanding Benchmark. And it's, again, a measure of intelligence. You see that the first model, the first small model to reach that was Palm with 540 billion parameters. That's a lot of parameters. You can think of that as equivalent to the neurons, essentially, that make up the model and help to do its work. Well, recently, the Phi 3 mini model was able to also score over 60% with just 3.8 billion parameters. That's 540 billion compared to 3.8 billion. It's a 142 reduction in just over 2 years. The progress is really astounding. Let's move to another one. Let's look at cost and the economics associated with these models. Models are just increasingly becoming cheaper. Depending on the task, these LLM inferences now, the operations that we go to use the models to perform, have fallen anywhere from $9 to 900 times per year. Again, I don't know if you'd call that exponential. I'd call it like a rocket ship is what I'd call it. The way things are moving is just astounding to me. Okay, final chart. It's not just that the models themselves are getting better. It's also that the application of the models is getting better. Here we're looking at agents and the rise of what we would think of as more useful agents. This is another benchmark. It's called the research engineering benchmark. In the industry, it's referred to as rebench. And as you see here, we have now found that we can produce agents. That's a packaging up of these models. Agents that can perform tasks, short tasks, 4 times better than humans. What we mean by short tasks is we give the humans a task and we give the machine, the model, a task, and we only give those 2 hours to work it out. With that constraint, models do 4 times better. But here's the kicker. If you give people more time, in this particular most recent test, 32 hours, well, it turns out the humans still outperform the models 2 to 1. So there we are. That's the moment. In a short window of time, we have models that outperform us. When given more time, we outperform them. That's the moment that we stand in. It's pretty incredible. And the question for all of us is, wow, where does all of this go? What does it mean for business? Well, today we'll talk about that, and I'll start with one really big idea. It's an idea that we recently talked about in our Work Trend Index. It's an annual publication where we try to project into the future, thinking about where work is going, where the patterns of work are headed. And one of the biggest ideas is this idea of intelligence on tap. What do we mean by that? We mean it simply to be this. Up until this point in human history, if you wanted to put intelligence to work, particularly in a business setting, you had to hire a person. That was the package that intelligence came in people. You hired them, you brought them on. There was a fully loaded or fully allocated cost associated with them. For the first time in history, we now have intelligence that we can sell you, that you can buy as a commodity. Like you buy electricity, like you buy water. You can buy it per hour, you can buy it for a day, you can buy it for 30 days and then stop. You can apply it to any problem you have. You can use it to create value. You can use it to reduce costs. What an incredible concept. This changes not only the economics of business, we believe it also changes management theory, certainly management practice. What a moment that we live in right now, and just in time. Now, what's emerging? We talked a moment ago about agents. Agents essentially are the way that we're packaging up these models to be useful for business. And we now see the rise of a new type of agent. Up to this point, most agents have essentially been assistants. They take on our identity. They help us do kind of short-lived or short-running tasks. Well, at this moment, we're starting to see the emergence of a new type of agent, one that we call a digital employee. We refer to the entire domain as digital labor. Digital labor and digital employees mean that we can create agents that have autonomy, that can perform very long-running tasks, that check back in. They're certainly managed by people, but check back in with people when they need clarification, when they have something that they don't know what to do with. That's a digital employee. And they are creating today, just beginning to create today, a new pattern in business of what we call the human agent team. It's essentially a human who not only does his or her work on their own, but calls on these agents to help them obtain expertise, not just information, expertise, analysis, creativity, specific skill sets to help them get their work done. A little bit later in our presentation today, we'll be joined by an HBR Harvard Business School professor who will talk to us about what we're seeing when we see these patterns emerge. Now, in the Work Trend Index, we started to poll 31,000 leaders across 31 countries just to get a sense for the state of the world. We found that 45% of these leaders say that they are already expanding team capacity with digital labor in their plans over the next 12 to 18 months. They're already working in this direction. Pretty impressive. Not quite half, but we see the beginnings of a trend. We also see that 46% tell us that in some embryonic form, they already are using agents to automate workflows or business process. So whereas 2024 was the year when we all were trying to figure out ROI, application, how's this all going to work, 2025, from our perspective, is the year when we really start to see business results. We think we'll look back on this year and see it as a milestone year, a year when the technology came together with the right talent and people to do something very, very special. Now, the title of our Work Trend Index, you can go look that up if you want to. The Work Trend Index published just a couple of weeks ago is all about what we call the frontier firm. All of these concepts are coming together to create what we believe is a new type of firm, a frontier firm. We use that word because frontier is the way that we are characterizing these models. The best models on the planet, the best models in the world are called frontier models. The frontier continues to move and improve. And so we feel like that characterization is a very good way to talk about what's happening to firms. These frontier firms look markedly different than other firms. They are firms that essentially put AI at the center of their operations, both in how they operate, but perhaps even more importantly, in how they create value. And we're seeing some very remarkable characteristics. Over the last year and a half, we've been studying them, finding as many as we can, interviewing them, looking at their numbers, comparing them to their peers. We find that they scale rapidly, that they operate with a different type of agility, that they generate revenue faster than ever before. Last week, I spent a day in Silicon Valley with a whole list of venture capitalists. I wanted to hear from the VCs who they were funding. I wanted to understand what the trends were. One of the most remarkable things that all of us are seeing is that we can now see firms that are scaling from the first dollar to over $100 million in less than 12 months. And they're doing so with just a handful of employees, some as few as 20 employees to reach that scale. It's like an incredible observation to see that type of scale happening, not just in one place, but across multiple companies that are starting to harness the power of AI. Now, the great thing about these frontier firms is that in many ways they are a time machine. Perhaps you can think of them as a crystal ball. They allow us to see into the future. By studying the frontier firms, we can understand what business will look like for all of us in just a few years. You may have heard the future is already here, just unevenly distributed. Well, these are the firms that can help us get a sense for where it's all going. And we actually have one of these firms here with us today. We're very lucky. It's called Mercor. Mercor is an AI-driven hiring platform that perhaps you haven't yet heard of, but it's an exciting business model. They essentially have trained models to do the evaluation of human talent and can now prove to you that their models, given interviews and given things like resumes, can predict better than you can, better than humans can, if a particular person will be good or a good fit for a position. They are one of these firms that is scaling in a tremendous way. They recently raised money at a $2 billion valuation. They're AI-powered to the core, and they were founded by a very young founders team. So we are very lucky to have one of the founders and the CEO, Brendan Foody, here to tell us just a little bit about Mercor. Let's welcome him to the stage. Brendan.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Cool, excited to be here and talk a little bit about how we built Mercor as an AI native company that we scaled to 9-figure revenue run rate with just 40 employees. So I'll start a little bit with the backstory of the business. My co-founders and I, and how we got started, was that we all met when we were in high school, just 14 years old, and we found the company when we were 19, where the initial business model was hiring people internationally, particularly in India, reviewing their resumes manually, conducting interviews manually, and matching them with our friends. We would charge our friends $500 a week, take a fee on that, and then as we scaled it up, we automated all of those processes with LLMs. So similar to how we were reviewing the resumes manually, conducting the interviews, and figuring out who to hire, we would automate each of these. And this allowed us to scale the business to $1 million revenue run rate before even dropping out of college. And so we were profited $80,000 after paying ourselves while we were still in school through leveraging all of the foundational models. But what really got extremely exciting was as the models started getting better so quickly underneath us, where it unlocked the ability to tap into new higher-end talent pools far exceeding many human capabilities. And so we then raised a little bit of funding while the business still remained profitable and scaled from 1 to 100 million in revenue in 11 months. We now work with all of the top 5 AI labs, hiring experts for them to train AI models, and we work with a majority of the big tech companies. And so it's been a wild ride, and still with 40 employees, showing just how much leverage the technology is able to provide in doing so. And while we've maintained this incredible growth, we've done so incredibly profitably, with the business profiting over $1 million a month, which has been very exciting. But what I want to talk a little bit more about is really the core technology underlying it, and then how it pertains to every business and how that informs how everyone should be building companies. Because what we realized was that there is a core unit of economic value that matters in our business, which is given a selection of candidates, their resumes and their interviews, how can you accurately select which candidates are going to perform better on a job? And it's a really difficult problem, one that humans think they know how to do well, but really struggle immensely with. And so if we can structure the problem and then goal the models on getting better at that iteratively, it makes all the difference in driving value for our customers. So what I have the results of up here is a pairwise eval set, which basically means that we give the model visibility of 2 candidates, their resumes, their interviews, and it selects which one it thinks will perform better on a job. And expert human hiring managers, so think hiring manager at Google or a hiring manager at McKinsey, scored 75% on this eval, whereas the models, when post-trained, were able to score 82%, showing that this technology is already profoundly impactful, and it's just a matter of time for it to get applied throughout the entire economy. And in addition to this, it's obviously far more scalable, far more cost efficient. And so it's really, really exciting to see the impact that this drives in organizations. Even many large enterprises we talk to aren't able to interview all of the candidates that apply to them. Many get millions of applicants and might only be able to talk to tens of thousands. And so through leveraging the technology to talk to every candidate while also making better predictions around who can perform well, it's really incredibly powerful. And the final thing that I want to tie this back to is what I think it informs with respect to how everyone is applying AI throughout their businesses. Because I think that there is all of the low-hanging fruit that everyone's aware of on the peripherals of how do we leverage things like ChatGPT to help write documents for us? How do we use Copilot Studio to help automate our workflows, or Cursor, GitHub Copilot to help us code? But I think the most important thing is understanding the core unit of value in your business and then building an eval or test out of that so that you can automate that and goal on it over time. As Jared was talking about, the way that all AI research works is that these researchers create an eval that they're goaling on to perform better. So an example is people have goaled a lot on GPQA, where you have a PhD write a test question, and then non-experts will review that test question to make sure they're not able to solve it, it's difficult enough, and then the researchers will try to max it out and achieve PhD level reasoning, where they'll sort of have gradient ascent to improve iteratively towards that. But I think that kind of eval needs to exist for every business. And it only needs to cover the most critical workflows of understanding what unit of work, if you get right, will completely transform the way that you operate and create value for your customers. And it's easier said than done. It's not going to be the model performing perfectly immediately, but understanding how humans perform on that eval, how models perform, and then how you can improve it is where all of the magic comes from. And the other key differentiator, I think, is learning from your usage data flywheels to help inform that. Because what we do is when we hire someone for one of our customers, we, of course, have a prediction that that person will perform well. But then we learn from the feedback of our customers of who didn't perform well, who did perform well, and we add that back to our eval set to understand what went wrong. Did that person, have a bad reference that we didn't catch? Was it that we didn't ask them the right question in the interview to gauge the skill that we actually care about? Refining this air taxonomy, as researchers would call it, of what went wrong and how we can bake that into the model. But instead of all of these insights living within individual people's heads, we're able to productionize it into the entire business of learning from every customer at once so that we don't make those kinds of mistakes in the future, which is incredibly powerful. And so that's a little bit about how we built Mercor to be this incredible business that's been growing really quickly. I just turned 22 last month, and so it's been a wild ride. But I appreciate you all having me. Awesome, so much. Thank you.
All right, I have two questions for you. What were you doing when you were 14, number one? And then what were you doing when you were 22? I do want to pause here for a second. I'm so grateful for Brendan showing up because I want to just reflect. You heard him, but I just want to reflect on what you heard as his chain of thought, like how he was thinking about things. You heard him talk about the key units of value or of production, right? There's a 22-year-old who's saying, here's my secret sauce. I'm thinking about a business problem. I've identified where the value is created. And then I've started to think about how we evaluate that and how we systematize that. And mostly what I want to say to you in this session today is you just saw the future. In so many ways, we are at peak knowledge work inefficiency. And what I mean by that is so much of knowledge work is so squishy. We don't measure it. We're not sure. I don't know. Was it worth it? Was it not? The Industrial Revolution took production, physical production, from being a cottage industry to the factory. It essentially drove rigor and measurement and focus and systems. That's what's going to happen to knowledge work, to cognitive labor that digital labor and digital employees do. That's the future. If you're trying to get the big ideas, that's how it all comes together. Now, think about Mercor for a moment. They were unencumbered by previous systems or ways of doing things. There were no old habits that were dying hard with them. They could start from the ground up. They could just say, AI is going to be core to the way we do things. My firm and your firm are not so lucky. We're going concerns. We're already doing things. And so the question becomes, can a company like yours or like mine become a frontier firm? Our answer is a resounding yes. Absolutely. But it takes real work. And you're here today, we think, as the beginning of that journey. Our latest WTI, that Work Trends Index, essentially lays out a blueprint. We took all of the research that we have been doing across all of these frontier firms and tried to find the patterns. And we think we now have a sense for a couple of phases that all of us will go through. Here's how it starts. Phase one for us is essentially a human with an assistant, an agent that helps that human get more done. This is very much the human with Copilot. Please don't think that because it's phase one, it's not valuable. We think it's incredibly valuable. But in this phase, you're not reimagining work as much as you are making work more efficient. You're allowing the assistant to take the drudgery away, to take all of the stuff that is not so value producing away so the human can focus on what is most important. It's an incredibly important phase, if only to teach humans what they can do with these models. It's the beginning. 2 years ago when we introduced Copilot, inadvertently, we didn't know it then, we were entering officially as a world into phase one. But things don't stop there. What we see is the emergence of a phase two. With phase two, you begin to be, if you will, an agent boss. You don't just have one assistant, but you have many agents that help to give you different aspects of expertise. They help to round out your skill set. They help you to do more than you could otherwise do. In a moment, when we bring on our Harvard Business School professor, he studied this phase and was able to find, for instance, that a human equipped with different AI agents can now outperform, in a field study, outperform a team of other humans in getting work done. A really remarkable result. Here, these agents equip people to do things they don't have the expertise to do. It's a really, really notable pattern that will begin to transform your company and mine. Finally, we move into phase 3. This is where humans set the direction, but agents start to manage processes end to end, workflows end to end. We envision entire departments or functions end to end. The humans certainly set the direction. They certainly oversee what's happening. They manage all of the access to data. They're making the most important decisions. But there is so much of work that can be kind of moved to the factory, and their people don't need to do that work. Agents can complete it for them. This is where we're headed in phase 3. It will totally transform everything from organizational structure to the way we think about jobs to all the way back in education, the way we educate our young people. It has profound, profound implications for society and for our economies. Picture, for instance, how a supply chain role may be different. You would have a boss who would oversee the supply chain, but you'd have a series, a constellation even, of agents who are running the most important processes. So with that, I'm going to now transition from what was a truly frontier firm from its birth in Mercor to a different type of firm. This is a firm that's a going concern that's making the transition right now. Holland America Cruise Lines is one of our customers, and a customer we're proud to be associated with. They have a virtual concierge named Anna that you'll hear more about, that they put front and center to help optimize the experience that people have on their cruises. It's just one of the many ways that they're using AI to really change how they operate. In a moment, I'm going to hand it over to Scot Pettit, who's a senior director of e-commerce, to tell you more about what they're doing. But first, let's watch just a quick video so you get an overview of what's going on.
Making the web experience work for everybody is hard to do. We were really interested in trying to find a way that the digital experience could answer those questions for a particular guest. We decided to create Anna, our digital concierge. The Microsoft Copilot platform had the flexibility that we were looking for. Prompts were designed specifically to make sure that our crew member service was coming forward in a digital way. Anna integrated into our CRM system so that when our guests engage with Anna, they're getting real-time information. Copilot Studio has helped us achieve the goals that we're looking for.
Thank you, Jared. Good morning, everybody. I feel like I should start and say I'm not 22. That was not planned, and I think when I was 14, I was mowing lawns, and when I was 22, I was at the call center at Compaq. Okay, so I'm here to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Holland America. I'm Scot Pettit. I lead e-commerce product strategy. And a little bit about Holland America first. If you're not familiar with us, we are 152 years old. We've been sailing around the world, taking customers to hundreds of countries and thousands of ports. We are really well known for our award-winning service, great music, and great food. It's really fun. But cruise is complicated, especially if you're new to cruise. There's a lot to think about. You've got to think about not only the basics of when you want to go, where you want to go, but then you got to start thinking about what ship is best for you, or do you want to go all-inclusive or not? Because there's a lot included without having all-inclusive. You just need to know it all. So it is a bit challenging. We want to help each and every guest out personally. But it gets more difficult from there because we have guests from all over the world, from different countries and different cultures, speaking different languages. You get your new cruisers who have never been on a cruise before and don't know what to expect, and you've got avid cruisers that go 5 or more times a year. There's people traveling solo, groups all the way up to like family reunions and wedding parties. There's just a lot of different types of people that we have to be able to work with. So as part of our digital journey, we have to think about all of this and make it really easy. Customers, if they book through hollandamerica.com, they're likely going to follow this digital journey through and through. But if you book from one of our great travel agents or a personal cruise consultant, you could come in and out of this journey at any point. We've got to make it easy for you at every point, no matter if you come in or out, wherever you are in the journey. So we get questions, a lot of questions, so many different types of people, so many different types of guests. We get a ton of them. It's a heavy burden on the contact center. So what do? How do we make and address everybody's unique individual needs? That's where the challenge comes in. So as part of e-commerce, we are, of course, responsible for direct revenue. We'll be thinking all the time about how we optimize the user experience. We run a ton of A/B tests to figure out how we optimize the architecture or build new features, really driving up conversion rates, driving down abandonment rates. We'll do all those things, but they take time, and they generally are meant for our typical audience that comes to hollandamerica.com. We have a second goal, which is to reduce service-related calls to the call center. Call center wants to spend their time talking to new guests, explaining to them the value and the excitement around cruising. So we want to make sure we can make the website as self-serviceable as possible, taking all those questions and making them available online. So insert generative AI. To go back in time just a little bit, 3 or 4 years when it was all the craze, and it still is all the craze, I know, it just keeps changing now and accelerating. But back then, it was almost like every vendor and partner we worked with came to us and said they had the best solution. They were all building AI into their platform. We chose 2 of them to start with. It was a great learning experience. One was focused on improving cruise search results, and one was focused on general site search, which didn't work very well. It was a good start. We learned a lot about what the technology could do for us. But the challenge was they were limited. They were limited to only those 2 use cases. And if you look across that entire digital journey I was just sharing with you, there's a lot of different touch points. We had to think about that, and it didn't really help everyone. So then about 1.5 years ago, we were introduced to Copilot, and we started looking into it and seeing demos and having conversations, and we really started to think, well, wait a minute, we don't have to invest in these 2 solutions that are only part of the 2 aspects of our digital journey. We could possibly have something that could help us throughout the entire digital journey and many use cases. So it started to become a little bit obvious to us that this was the right move. So we invested in Copilot as a platform. We chose Acuvate to help us launch and support us in this effort. And it just became more attractive to us. Not only was it going to help us in English, but it could help us translate to German, Spanish, and Dutch, which are our major markets that we do business in around the world. So I wanted to start just introducing you to Anna. Anna was launched about 9 months ago. You could say she was born 9 months ago. And at Holland America, like I mentioned in the beginning, service runs deep. If you've ever sailed with us, you'll know that the crew members on board go out of their way to learn your name, to introduce themselves, ask you how they can help you. If you ever talk to the front desk, they're amazing. They're super friendly, and they want to just help you out with whatever your question is. That was the impetus behind Anna. We needed to make sure we had something that was friendly, knowledgeable, personal, and that knows a lot. She had to know a whole lot. So Anna, she's not a chatbot. We've said that since the beginning. She's an agent. For us, she's a front desk agent. She can help you find a cruise. She can help you find a shore excursion. You can log in and she'll help you give personalized offers to you or get your itinerary. She's really good with just general questions. She's here to help. And questions. We do get a lot of questions. So many different types of customers. We knew going into this that she needed to be accurate. We didn't want her to be wrong or guess at answers because that could just make things worse. That would just drive call volumes up. She needed to be correct. So we started pretty, we didn't want her to hallucinate. We started with, using the content on hollandamerica.com. We didn't want it to be a vast universe of content that she'd be working with. So we started building out the content on hollandamerica.com to support Anna, and that worked well, but it wasn't enough. So we opened up Anna's knowledge to the call center database, the same database that agents, whether they've been there 1 week or been there 10 years, are using. So Anna now has access to the articles available in there. But still, going back to all these different customer types from every corner, we had to take it a step further. We had then integrated live chat into Anna's interface. So if Anna gets a sense that you're frustrated, or she doesn't know the answer, or a customer simply asks to talk to an agent, Anna will bring in a live agent to help answer the question. The agent has a full transcript of what the conversation between Anna and the guest was, and the live agent can help answer the customer's question right then and there. There's no dead ends. That's what's most exciting about it. Customer gets what they need, they're on their way. So, after 6 months of being live, Anna's answering about 50,000 queries a week. That translates to about 10,000 conversations. We're taking all those queries and running them back through Copilot to get a sentiment analysis done. And good news is 93% of those conversations are positive sentiment, meaning the customer had a good experience. The remaining 7%, that's where we focus our time. We got to think about what new content we need. We got to think about, do we change the user experience? Do we change our marketing? Or sometimes it even means let's build another feature or enhance an existing feature. So the 7% has been extremely valuable for us to get back. So finally, I'll leave you with this. These are some of the learnings along the way that we took to heart. One was a very risk-adverse approach to launch. This was, we knew, coming into this that we didn't want her to be wrong. I mentioned that earlier. So we tested and tested quite adamantly at the beginning. We had our web team and e-commerce team test, then we had marketing test, then we had the whole company test. It wasn't until then we felt confident that we could roll it out to all our customers. And we rolled it out to 20% first, made sure Anna was working right, then quickly went to 50% and 100%. Content. I talked about content a few times. We're still working on content. It's been hugely valuable to us. It doesn't just help Anna, but it helps our general customer every day as well on the website. And it's not only that, it's helped our SEO programs with Bing and Google driving new customers in. So we've seen a lot of good value out of that. And finally, engagement. Customers have access to Anna at every page on the website, whether you're logged in, not logged in. They can interact with her at any point. But engagement overall is relatively low compared to the number of visitors that we get. So we've tested a lot of opportunity to drive up engagement. We've tested animations, we've tested opening Anna after 5 or 10 seconds, we've tested customizing the welcome message depending on where you were in that digital journey. We've even tested inserting Anna directly into a web page, like where do you want to cruise today? And people can just get started there. All of these things have worked. Now it's on us to figure out where we want to insert Anna in more visible places to drive up conversion and reduce abandonment. I'm really excited to see what we can do next. It's going to be fun. So that's our story. I hope to see you soon on a cruise. And back to you, Jared.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Just fascinating. All right, as we end things up in this session, I just want to kind of chart where we've been and then sit down for a few minutes with one of my favorite people. So think about this. We started out by just looking at the benchmarks, looking at the performance of the models. It's a really remarkable time. There's no doubt about it that we have some of the most capable models that have ever existed. Boy, they raise interesting questions. Then we talked about the frontier firm. First introducing a frontier firm that was born a frontier firm with Brendan. And then looking at our friend Scot and what he's doing is he transforms a going concern into a frontier firm. As we end out our session today, it's really a pleasure to invite one of my friends up to just talk about where this is all going, and in particular, what this means for you as a leader in your career and in your company right now. I want to talk for just a moment about this particular gentleman, and then we'll invite him out to the stage. Karim Lakhani is a business school professor at the Harvard Business School. From my vantage point, he is one of the premier studiers of AI in the wild. He's actually very focused on what's really happening. How are we calculating ROI? How do we think about all of these things? He's the author of two of the premier studies that have been referred to over and over again over the last 2 years. The first is about what's called the jagged frontier of this technology. And the second, just recently released, is all about AI as a teammate. It's called the cybernetic teammate. So please, let's give Karim a warm welcome as he comes to the stage for the ending part here. Thank you so much. All right, Karim, I want to start out with that cybernetic teammate study. Yeah. This was done with Procter & Gamble, but many people may not be familiar with it. So could you spend a few minutes and just talk about it?
Sure. The study came out 3 weeks ago. And just to put it in context, the institute I run at Harvard, the Digital Data Design Institute, is really focusing on thinking about generative AI as a new drug that's in the economy. And we don't know efficacy, we don't know dose, we don't know side effects, we don't know how actual work will transform with the introduction of this technology. So we run clinical trials. We run them as randomized controlled trials to really understand how the technology shapes the workers. So this project came about at the request of Victor Aguilar, who's the head of R&D for Procter & Gamble. And he wanted to understand how generative AI could radically transform the innovation process at P&G. And in innovation, as you know, there's often this interaction between R&D and commercial people. R&D people come up with the technical ideas, but the commercial people really say, like, is there a market for this or not? And the best practice in all of this is to actually have them collaborate in a team. So we designed this study as what we call a 2x2 design. So we have commercial and marketing folks working on challenges given by their business leaders without AI and with AI. And then also individuals, either a commercial person or R&D person with AI or without AI. And then we randomize who's in which treatment, and then they go solve the problems with those tools.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about the results.
758 professionals.
Yeah, so field study, and let's talk about the results. I'll just summarize very briefly. This is the one that caught my attention. This is the study that actually showed that an individual equipped with AI could perform at least as well as, and sometimes outperform entire teams of people without AI. Kind of a landmark finding. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so what we were looking at in the study, we were measuring various things. So when we think about a team, what does a teammate provide? They provide you with some kind of functional expertise. Then teams also help you with coordination. And the teams also give you a sense of camaraderie, like you're part of a social setting. And so we measured all these three things as the work emerged in front of us. We did this all remotely. We were on Microsoft Teams platform to make this all happen. And the first finding was that when we look at pure performance, the quality of the ideas being created, individuals with AI were as good as a team without AI, and often as good as a team with AI as well, which was remarkable from our perspective. The other thing here that we saw, which was also interesting, is that if you have an individual without AI, and when they're working away on a challenge from their business leaders, right, they will sort of veer towards their functional expertise. So marketing people give marketing-based solutions, R&D people give R&D-based solutions. Individuals with AI gave balanced solutions. Balanced solutions that were equivalent to the balanced solutions we saw from teams as well. And that was like a big aha moment for us as well.
Man, that's great. I love aha moments and when we're surprised in these things. Were there any other surprises in terms of how the people used it, reframed their work, wanted to use it going forward?
Oh yeah, 100%. And like as we did the study, we had done various studies before sort of showing the productivity effects of AI. So we'd sort of seen that, both in terms of quality and also time. The time compression is actually quite remarkable. And as you know, like teams have a time penalty. The time penalty with AI goes away. And so our follow-on study is actually looking at the transcripts of all the interactions and seeing how was it that the time penalty actually went away. So that was a big surprise because you would still expect some time penalty in teams, but that literally went away. The other thing that was also surprising was the fact that people felt good using the AI tools. So they have more positive emotions and fewer negative emotions as they were doing the work. And this too was like, huh. And so the big aha for us was that AI has shifted from being a tool to a teammate, right? From a tool to a teammate. And as you were saying in your keynote, this is unprecedented in our history.
Yeah.
Right? This is, again, intelligence on tap, expertise on tap being made available.
You know, I don't know, for all of us, I think it raises some interesting questions, some uncomfortable questions that I wouldn't sit here and tell you I know the answers to. I have 4 kids, you know, pretty much all in their 20s at this point. They're just starting the workforce. The other day, my 25-year-old said to me, asked him how work was. He said, Dad, it's good. I just don't like the people. I think work would be better without people, it turns out. I tried to tell him, you really shouldn't think that way, son. But when you think about what's happening here, you know, happier using an AI agent or a team of AI agents, I think that raises a very uncomfortable question. Not one that we'd sit here as prophets and say that's the way to go. I think there's more work for us to do.
No, it's incredible because I think, you know, we often say there's a lot of evidence showing that social skills and soft skills actually are important in performance.
Absolutely.
And so when I teach about AI in our MBA program or exec programs, people say, well, there's always the empathy side, right? Like humans have empathy. I'm like, okay, let's look at the evidence. And it turns out that the answers from AI are rated more empathetically than the ones from humans. And so when you do you know, we could do a little poll, well, we won't do the poll here, but I've done polls like the following, like how many of you like to work with your boss, right? Tough question, I know. Some bosses are in here, they might not want to see the answers. So, you know, 50-50, right? I hate my boss is incredible, 50-50. And so then you ask, like, would you want to work with the AI as your boss? And a lot of people say yes. And so this element of like this more objective, potentially more empathetic boss is actually kind of interesting.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yes,
So
we'll pull your directs as well, Jerry.
Okay. I want to switch over. That was one study. I'd encourage you to check it out. Very interesting. That's the field study on Procter & Gamble. I want to go over to the one that kind of really took the world by storm 18 months ago. You and I were talking. It's about the jagged technological frontier of this technology. And it was one that I think woke people up because it, in some ways, injected a sense of kind of measured realism. You know, yes, amazing things are happening, but tell us about what you're finding. Tell us about the big idea in that study.
Yeah. And so again, we try to make this, like I'm a hardcore empiricist. I love theories, but like I want to see evidence and I want to see experimental evidence. I want to see randomized controlled trials. Otherwise, I just don't believe the studies at all. And like my colleagues often hate me because they're running, you know, sort of archival studies. I'm like, I don't believe any of it. Go away. You know, that's like the privilege of being a professor. So in this study, we worked with Boston Consulting Group. They have graduates of elite MBA programs end up there as junior consultants starting their careers. And we were very interested in saying, like, how does this actually impact their work as well? So again, it's a randomized controlled trial. And what we're looking at again is for a set of tasks that consultants are doing that involve both creativity and analysis, how does the AI respond with them and how does it help them or hurt them along the way? And what we discovered was both good news and bad news. And this was the notion of the jagged technological frontier. So you know yourself, right, that at any given moment in time, while the overall improvement in AI is increasing in an exponential basis, it's still not good at everything. But when humans start to use it, right, can they actually account for the differences? And what we saw was that when AI was being used for things that it was good for, which was surprisingly, in this case, creative problem solving, ideation, branding, and so forth, the performance for these consultants improved by, on average, 40% compared to those without. Now remember, these are already elites from the education systems, right? They're from the top schools, half of them have MBAs, 25% of PhDs, 25% of undergraduates, right? And to see this big an effect was pretty massive. And then what we also saw was that those below average, and by the way, there's nobody below average at BCG, I have to tell you that, but those below average in our task, they improved by about 47%, but importantly, those above average improved by 17%. So those were like very profound effects in a real setting with real work being done. But then we saw the downside, and this is a jagged frontier, which is, as you recall, 18 months ago, if you put into GPT 3.5 or 4 a spreadsheet, it would just hallucinate. So what we saw in the analytical task, when the consultants had access to the GPT and they put in the spreadsheet, right, they got wrong answers, and their performance actually dropped by 20%. And my postdoc, Fabrizio Dell'Acqua, who's did both of these studies with me, he has done a prior study where he's found that people can fall asleep at the wheel with AI. They stop paying attention. And so that came back in spades to us in this study too. And we wanted to, again, in this sort of the side effect story of a clinical trial, look, there are some downsides, and it's really important for all of us who are adopting, bringing this in to actually understand its impact on work itself, what that does.
Wow. Okay, so we have a group of people here who have paid money to be here. They're very kind to be here the last day. Thank you once more. And I would imagine what's on their minds after this session is, okay, I get it. I understand where the technology is. What does this mean for me? You know, what do I need to do as a leader? Where do I go next? What would be my next move? What thoughts are on your mind? What advice might you have for the group?
Yeah, look, so I think, this is, as you said, this is the most exciting time to be alive, you know, as far as we're concerned about technology and what it'll unleash for human potential. I'm a techno-optimist, but also a realist in the sense of, like, we want to be sure that these tools help us overall. The first thing I would say for technology leaders is that you need to become best friends with your HR teams, right? Because this technology is not like prior technologies. Like, do you remember like debates about, like, should we have Wi-Fi in our offices? Remember, those were debates. I'm sure some of you participated in them. They maybe went up to your boards. What about like browsers? Should our employees have browsers? Should they have information access from around the globe? Those were questions we debated, but they didn't fundamentally change the nature of work. As we're seeing here, intelligence on demand, expertise on demand, these technologies are about work. So the first advice I would have for you is that as you think about adoption, make sure your HR teams, your functional leaders are attached to you, and you drive as much organizational transformation as you do the technical transformation. We often say it's 30% tech, 70% organization, which I think you should just know. So become best friends, staple yourselves to your HR teams. Or read up, get Copilot to tell you what the best things are about HR that you should know yourself, and also then be their advisor. It creates great tutorials, as you know. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would sort of say is that people are worried. People are worried a ton about these technologies. And so I think that's part of the conversation you need to be having about how do we have an abundance mindset around this? What are the capability unlocks? And again, these are things that typically, right, technology leaders have not been asked to talk about. But you need to own it and be able to engage in a conversation with your leaders about that as well. And the third bit that I would say is that this type of change has to be pushed top down. Has to be pushed top down. You know, I grew up in the era of Wired magazine and Fast Company in the 1990s. That's when the internet first came out. And if you remember, Fast Company was all about change agents, right? And the history of change agents is that they all get massacred, right, in most corporations. Why? Because if there's no top-down buy-in on this work, the work doesn't get happen. The change agents die, basically, on the vine. And so the key for us here is to make sure our top leaders actually get this, understand it, and see this as a work technology and as a business technology, not as an information technology.
Wow. Wow. I think those are words of wisdom here from Karim. I have one bonus question here as we end out. So think of that as kind of like your go-dos, your set of things to do. We've talked today about the patterns of work. We've talked about how human agent teams are coming in. We've talked about phases of work, you know. Is there any last concept or idea that you feel like has been left unsaid? You know, so you've given people advice, but I just wonder, as you think about your research, you know, you're meant to predict the future of work. Anything that you feel like has been left unsaid that I think the group...
Well, if I was good at predicting the future, then I would be like in the stock market, not as academic, right? So let me just caveat that I tend to be very much an empiricist. Like, I don't know. I'll come in with a discovery mindset. We'll run the experiment, and then we'll get the facts that way. So I think I'd love to offer you a framing, so around this intelligence view as well. So, and I keep going back, you know, I became an academic, decided to become an academic in the 1990s when I discovered open source software, which was supposed to sort of work in practice and not in theory. And we're at the same juncture now. This stuff works in practice, but our management theories or economic theories don't know how to handle this kind of a technology. But you are out there trying to figure this out. And if you recall, In the 1990s, the browser becomes available, same kind of a moment, right? There was 30 years of internet development in the bowels of organizations, and then we democratized the internet with the browser. So ChatGPT moment is the same. 2022 was the same moment. But what did the browser and the internet really do, right? Essentially, it lowered the marginal cost of information transmission. Right? It lowered the marginal cost of information transmission. And for all of you, how do we make this real? Well, if you go on a Teams call today with a global team or even a national team, right, you don't think twice about all the videos that are coming in and the conversations you're having in pretty high fidelity, right? 30 years ago, this would have cost us $10,000 per person per minute, right? 30 years ago. Why? Because every one of us would need a camera operator, a sound operator, a satellite truck, uplink, downlink on every side. It was not affordable. But today we don't think twice. And what happened was that the cost of information transmission went to zero. In this moment, what we're predicting is that the cost of expertise is going to zero. The marginal cost of expertise is going to zero. And if you believe that, then we're in for a big ride. Because what are companies but just bundles of expertise? We have finance, marketing, sales, R&D, brand. You have all this expertise, right? And as we sort of saw from Mercor and the Holland America example, as that cost of expertise drops, what a company does, what all of our roles are going to be, you as a boss, me as an institute leader, you all as technology leaders, is going to be up for grabs. And the thing I would say is that I would say that the direction of this change is up to all of us. We have to be the ones that set the direction of change and not be the receivers of it, but understand what's happening and then set the direction for ourselves and our companies.
Beautiful. Karim, I can't thank you enough for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, will you give it up for Karim Lakhani?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. All right, you guys have been very kind in spending this time with us. I just want to pick up there and end us out very quickly. I am a firm believer that you and I are not here on accident. I'm a firm believer. You can have other beliefs, but I'm a believer that you're here because you have some important work to do. The future is here unevenly distributed. I hope I've been able to prove to you that the technology is pretty amazing. I hope you can now see that whether you want to start something from scratch or start where you are, that there's a path forward. I really liked what Karim had to say about the big ideas here. He gave you some meat to chew on here over the coming weeks and months. But as you think about the future, we would encourage you to take a step back. Think about what role you play as a leader in your organization. Perhaps even bigger, think about the role that you play in the world. This technology will develop not because of Microsoft, not because of me or you or our companies, but because of what we do together. At Microsoft, we are here to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more for good. That's what we're about. We hope that we will join together with you to take this tech and to make the world a better place. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day. Take care.